Okay, here we go. This is my cool mountain biker dude. I'll kit it up. I think that's a Canyon Lux that I'm on right there. Get back to normal view. But I'm gonna ride. This will be a good warm up to the start of the jungle circuit loop, and then I can just do continuous loops around that. So we'll get going once I'm there. Definitely a lot better with the 32 tooth, because here we go, like 24, 25 miles per hour. You know, spinning pretty good, but definitely a bit more realistic. Okay, so I'm gonna start right here, right before I go around this bend, because that's where the marker is to start the lap of this jungle circuit. And I'm just gonna do a lap at, maybe push it a little bit, but not go totally crazy, and just kind of, because if I go totally crazy, then the next time I come to do it, I'll be too worn out. So I want to just kind of pick a nice comfortable thing and think more about feel, cadence, heart rate, power, all that stuff. So yeah, let's just go ahead and do it. I mean, I've never done this before, so who knows if I'll even do it good enough to be able to measure differences, but I can certainly talk about feel. So here we go. I'm going to start. Shoot for 15 miles per hour. I'm going to go through this arch here. And so this route will start off with a climb, and then it'll have a downhill. So here we go. Here's the climb. Still pretty flat. You can actually see my Ghost Rider from when I tried it before with the 30T. Realized it was way too spinny. You can see me at 85 RPM. And so initial thoughts here are that I do feel like I can go at higher RPM. Watts right around 230. All right, let's see how this goes when I get to the climb. So I don't normally ride right around 90 RPM, but it's pretty easy with a shorter crank set. 88, 89, 90, and I'm putting about 250 watts out. Again, I'm not going as hard as I can. Kind of want to stick with consistency. Surprised my heart rate is that low. That doesn't seem right. I'm about halfway up the hill. Here's a little flat spot. One thing I'm noticing is when I get to those flat spots, I like to shift into a harder gear and then hammer to get up to speed, and it's definitely more challenging to do that with these shorter cranks. But I notice when I'm in this mode, I'm definitely going at a much higher RPM than I normally would. Now my heart rate's up to 143. So to some of you, that might seem low, but you have to factor in my age. At 56, my max heart rate is 165. It's actually a little lower than that, I think. So 146 is getting up there for me. So here, there we go. Yeah, see that part where I like to shift into a harder gear on that little downhill? seems harder to me. Shorter cranks. Like maybe it's a technique thing where I need to wait and pedal faster and then shift and not shift so early. There's my Ghost Rider. Okay, I'm almost to the top. My heart rate's 155. Still running around 90 RPM. Huh. I'm trying to avoid shifting into a harder gear when I feel the resistance drop off. All right, that's the top. All right, so I'll spin more on this downhill and then shift. Okay. Whew. All right. Okay. Now we're into the downhill. I'm in my hardest gear, 3211, 93 RPM, 94 RPM, 30 miles per hour. Definitely feel like I can keep higher RPM. We'll have to see what happens when I put the other cranks on. Oh no, I don't want to go that way. We are coming to the finish. Still around 90 RPM almost, 89, 88. I'm just gonna try to keep this pace. I'm not gonna like sprint hard to the finish. A little bit of a climb, so I'm gonna downshift. Okay. Whew. Now to swap cranks. So I'll go back to where I started before. Swap cranks. Then we'll do another lap. And the crank swapping process will give me time to recover and be back to full energy. Okay. Here we go. Pretty rested up, but I didn't want to cool off too much. So I kind of did that pit stop style. So now I got the 70 millimeter cranks. I had the 65 millimeter on before. Same chain ring, so same gear ratios and everything. Let's see how this goes. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Oh, this is so weird. I gotta lower my seat. Hold on a sec. Okay, here we go. That feels better. I noticed right away that my seat felt too high when I switched to the 170 cranks. I mean, the fact that I did this back to back, we're talking only 5 millimeters, but we gotta realize it's actually 10 because we're adding 5 to each crank arm, but it feels way different. So there's my other rider. So that rider was with 165 millimeter cranks. Am I gonna get smoked by my 165 millimeter crank guy? We'll find out. I'm definitely high RPMs again, 88, but it's harder to do. Like, I can definitely feel like my knees are coming up higher, my legs are making bigger circles. Wow, pretty stark difference, and we're talking only 5 millimeters. Now we're starting to climb. We're gonna have to see how I do against that Ghost Rider. I don't know, man. I'm not able to easily catch up. Here's that part where I definitely have more leverage when I want to get on it at the crest of a hill like that. Okay, so I'm not losing my other rider. One thing I'm noticing though, my RPMs are lower and I'm pushing harder. When I go into an easier gear, it's much harder to spin at a high RPM. So I prefer to be in a harder gear and push against the resistance, the longer crank. And it certainly seems to be reeling in my other rider. There we go. Heart rate's right around 149, so maybe around the same. Okay, so we're getting near the top again. So at one point, I was 9 seconds ahead of my other rider. Now I'm down to 7 seconds. Trying to find that ideal cadence to climb. Still 7 seconds ahead, almost to the top. Well, that's a pretty sizable gap. Well, now I'm down to 5. Woo! But I feel like I'm working a lot harder this time. Wow. Yep, 157 heart rate. Yep, working harder this time. Wow. And my other rider's gaining on me. I got a hammer. Can't spin as fast. Well, couldn't top out the 30 miles per hour as quickly. Oh my gosh, my other rider's coming so fast. Now I feel like I'm just working really hard to stay ahead. What I'm doing now is trying to match the wattage of my other rider, because this is where I recovered when I got to the top the last time. So I'm recovering now. making sure I stay somewhat consistent with my laps. And then when I get to the downhill here, I'll start going here's the downhill. On my other rider, I was able to easily do 90 RPM. And I was in the hardest gear, the 11-2. Oh, the steering is so fun on this. Whew. Oh, I'm in the hardest gear now. So I'm close. 90 RPM. Oh, I'm smoking the other rider right now. I thought that on the downhill, my other lap would catch up with me. This is not happening. 92 RPM, 94. I'm in the hardest gear. My watts is way up there. Oh, I'm crushing it. Well, I am not convinced shorter cranks are the answer because I am 15 seconds ahead of the other rider. He's going to catch up to me a little bit. He's still on the downhill and I'm on the flats. But we're looking at probably a 10-second or so gap. We're looking at the times there. Oh, we're under 10. Oh, that's somebody else. My rider. 54. Wow. 1% faster. So that was a gap of about 13 or 14 seconds. That's a big gap. Let me catch my breath. Okay. So just to let you know kind of what I did is I did the warm up to get to the start. So I was already warmed up before I started my first lap with the 165 cranks, right? Then I did that lap, which you saw. Stopped. Changed out crank sets. I want to say I probably did it in less than 10 minutes or right around 10 minutes. Got back on. Energized up. I energized up before the first one too during the warm-up. And then knocked out the second one. So trying to make kind of both laps somewhat equal. So the first lap wasn't like a cold lap. I was already warmed up. And for me and my fitness level, 13.9 miles is well within where I'm still strong. I don't start getting like wobbly and all weak until I'm way past that. And I didn't push as hard as I possibly could. I tried to keep kind of a more consistent feel. So anyway, so what did I come up with here? Well, I definitely felt like I was able to get more watts and more power with the longer crank arms. I have a 30-inch inseam. As far as how they felt, I feel like the 165s felt better. Like they felt better for my legs. Like on the 170s, I could kind of feel a little bit of tweakage in my right knee and so on. I mean, obviously I could have probably done more fine-tune adjustments to help that out, and it wasn't terrible. It was very subtle, but I could notice there was more pressure on my knees doing the bigger circles than doing the smaller circles. which is surprising because we're only talking 5 millimeters, and I keep saying that, but I was actually surprised at how stark the difference was between the two crank arm lengths, being that they're so subtle. But if I was racing and it was a shorter course, 20-mile, 25-mile course or something, by all means, I would go with the longer crank arms and crush it, because a 13-second time gap is huge. So even if I had some inconsistencies or some things I didn't do quite accurate for a comparison, that's a big enough time difference to show that for me, and this is for me, the longer crank arms gave me more power. I was able to sustain my speed more. I did notice on the downhill, I had no problem going 90 some RPM. On the climbs, the bigger difference was I was doing more around 80 some RPM with the 170s, and I was closer to 88 to 90 RPM with the 165 crank arms. And I was able to go in a harder gear, because I definitely was in a harder gear when I was with the longer crank arms on the climb. And I was able to reel in my other rider. Why my other rider took off right from the start, I don't know if I remembered to make sure I was going 15 miles per hour or not. But why my other rider got a good lead on me for the very beginning might have had something to do with being on the flats. So I mean, I'm kind of curious to know, if I was on the flats, would a shorter crank be better than a longer crank arm? Doing just flat out flats without ups and downs? I don't know at this point, because there's not enough flats in this course to determine that. But early on, my other rider took off and then got a certain distance in front of me and then stayed there for a while, and then as we got deeper into the climb, I was able to slowly reel the rider in. Lower RPMs and more watts, more power. So, yeah, harder gear. So for me, 170s definitely makes sense, but I'm not done. I'd wait until riding season comes around, and I'll do this test again on true single track and see if my opinion is the same. Anyway, I hope you like this test. I think I need to shower. I appreciate your support for my channel. Please like and subscribe. Peace.